My name is Bill Brown. I'm the current president of the Shipmates Society in New Jersey. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce a colleague of mine, Tom Ruggiero. Tom started building initially plastic model kits at a very early age. But as he got older, he started to get more interested in history, making some family trips and vacations to several maritime venues like the USS Constitution in Boston. After many plastic ship model kits, he got introduced to wooden ship modeling by a coworker at one of his first employers after college. And from there, he went on to scratch building models. He joined the Ship Model Club back in '87. He served as prior president for 8 years, and he's currently the secretary and treasurer of the Ship Model Society of New Jersey, which I can tell you is a far tougher job than president. He's a director of the Nautical Research Guild. He's retired now from the power generation industry since 2016, but he still does a lot of volunteer code and standards work for the ASME. He's a registered professional engineer and an ASME fellow. So with that, I'll hand it over to my good friend, Tom Ruggiero. Tom?
Thank you, Bill. Let's do a screen share right here. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. All right, so the topic today is ship modeling more than just a hobby. Okay, this is not moving. Why is that happening? All right. Hang on. I'm trying to get the presentation to work. Okay, we'll do it this way then. All right, so it's ship modeling more than just a hobby. Okay, there are different types of ships, ship models. Generally, hang on, I gotta move the box out of the way. Okay, generally they are grouped into the method of movement, that is powered versus sail or oared, or they can be broken down to the periods of time in service, and that's ancient, which is Roman and Greek, Viking, age of sail, modern, warships, pleasure craft, commercial. At Nautical Research Guild, we even have one member who builds models that are biblical in nature, going all the way back to before Christ. Okay. Getting started with ship models, they can be made from many materials. Some of these are wood, brass, plastic, sometimes styrene, sometimes other, resin, and we even had a member that built his models in steel, believe it or not. And therein is a separate story that we can talk about later if we want to. There are several considerations for both. I'll present that, and after I'll get a little bit more background. There are kits, and then there are kits. Many of my generation and older, before iPad and video games, built from kits. The typical plastic kit of the past included everything except for paint and glue. Maybe you started with making something like a car or a plane, maybe a figure, maybe even a dinosaur. After a while, maybe you graduated to larger aircraft, spacecraft, ship models. Were a step up though. Generally, they were larger in size and had many, many more parts. So as your skills got better, and you weren't too busy with school, chores, and sports, maybe you started to modify the kits, finding that the result that you got right out of the box wasn't good enough, that it was, that is what is known as kit bashing. And there are very detailed and highly accurate models made from a kit. A typical plastic kit for a ship model is shown on the next slide. Okay, this particular one is actually a pretty good kit. This is a kit for the USS North Carolina, which is a World War II battleship. It's a bit more advanced than your typical kit that you had as a child. This particular kit is extremely accurate. You will note that it has a bag of photo etch parts to upgrade the base model, as well as to make other ships of class. These particular parts are aftermarket, although some of the other high-end kits, you could get this photo etch with the kit. While painting is required and enhances the finished product, all parts required are there. You simply reassemble assemble the parts. With plastic kits, display can enhance any kit. This kit has a lower part of the hull as a separate piece. So if you want to do a diorama with the ship in an ocean, you could omit fixing the bottom part of the hull and have it in a diorama. Okay, this slide is a resin kit. This is a kit for the USS California. This particular version of the California is the World War II version after it was raised from Pearl Harbor. The kit is made from resin. You note that it is sold with the photo etch to detail the ship. The model is a waterline model. That is, it doesn't come with a lower portion, so you have to put it on a flat surface, probably into a diorama. As with these types of kits, there isn't a lot of scratch building to make a very accurate model. That said, there is a good deal of research that you can do to make it an accurate presentation, such as accurate color schemes, camouflage patterns, etc. For example, lots of information on the internet where we're all of the age that we remember World War II and the struggles we went through. There were different patterns that ships were painted in based on whether they were in the Atlantic or the Pacific, based on whether they were in the North Atlantic, based on whether they were in the Central Pacific or down in the Philippines. Some ships were repainted multiple times. So you can basically, if you do enough research, you can kit bash a kit that you could depict a certain snapshot in time for your model. And then there's wooden kits. Plastic kits are the general starting point for model builders. And if you are building a period ship or boat, however, wood is the next step. Now, there are plastic kits of sailing ships, Renwall and Revell. Revell has a very famous kit of the USS Constitution. I have one in my living room that I built. Heller, it's a French company, used to market a kit of the HMS Victory and also of the Sovereign of the Seas. And they were probably the best plastic sailing ship models on the market. Unfortunately, I don't think you can get them anymore, or maybe you can find them on eBay or a garage sale, but if you can get hold of one at a reasonable price, you've got yourself a pretty good kit. The wooden kit typically isn't for the youngster, as building it does involve sharp tools. While a plastic kit can be assembled right out of the box, the wooden kit requires that assemblies be built rather than just assembled. And the next slide's a typical wooden kit. Okay, this happens to be a pretty good wooden kit. This kit was actually designed by one of our club members. It's marketed by Model Shipways. It's a modern kit. Included are parts required to build a structure for the hull. The parts are laser cut so the fit is much better. Where the parts than where you would get a kit that you'd have to cut out the parts or they're stamped out. It also includes a very good instruction manual. This is not typical. It's very atypical. Many kits have simple plans with instructions written out on a plan sheet in several languages, with in most cases, English not being a primary language. Anyone who in the old days had something that was made in Japan, for example, or in China, and it was shipped over, and there was a very loose translation of the instructions for using the thing. You can tell right away that English was not the primary language of the translator. Nevertheless, many of the various structures in this kit need to be built up, and all the parts need to be sanded or shaped. Okay, on to scratch building. As with plastic kits, wooden kits can be kit bashed. Where aftermarket parts or even scratch-built structures are substituted for what's in the kit. It is not unusual to replace decorations, castings, rigging line, blocks, or even wood in the kit. at some point, and hopefully before you get totally frustrated, you might want to try your hand at scratch building an entire model. Now, I will tell you, and I don't want to get into a commercial, but I will tell you that there are manufacturers today that are really above board. I could name a few names if people want to ask me later. But there is one model company that markets kits, which we'll talk about a little bit more about later. His philosophy is, I don't want to put a kit on the street where the person I sell the kit to, the first thing he does is replace almost everything that's in the box with aftermarket stuff. Okay, so that's a goal, and I'll tell them more about that later. Okay, before I go through the pros and cons for a kit versus scratch built, well, let me go back one more time. Okay, you can tell from this photograph of a kit, basically what you're getting is a bunch of sheets of plywood that are either laser cut or that you have to cut out the pieces, and then you're expected to assemble the whole thing. This involves shaping every plank to plank the hull and that kind of thing. This is at a big variance to plastic kits, because plastic kits, even the not so good ones, it's just a matter of knocking the flash off the pieces and assembling the pieces together. Now, of course, you add aftermarket parts to get more accurate parts, and yes, you're going to paint in more detail. But if you wanted to build a plastic kit directly out of the box, even if it didn't look particularly good, you could do that. With a wooden kit like pictured here, no way. Okay, before I go through the pros and cons for a kit versus scratch building, I want to discuss the different types of ways to build a hull, either in plastic or wood. These methods are a carved solid hull, assembled lifts, otherwise known as the lift method or a lift hull, plank on bulkhead, and plank on frame. Okay, this is a photograph of a solid hull that comes in many kits. The shape is far from finished, as the bulwarks, that is the walls, are left very thick due to machine duplicator, as well as to avoid damage during shipping. The knobs at either end of what held the raw block into the duplicator. The builder will make shape templates from the plans to get the hull down to the correct shape. Indeed, it may be easier to remove the bulwarks altogether, okay, remove the keel altogether and put them on as separate pieces in the correct dimensions. As a matter of fact, Bill can attest, he built, I think, this very kit, and that's exactly what he did. Okay, a step up or a step different from the carved hull is the lift hull. In this style, it's like a solid hull in that you need to carve it to get the correct shape. However, you put it together using lifts, almost like a topographical map. So that amount of carving that you have to do and the gyrations that you have to go through to verify that you have the correct spacing, the correct shape, is really not that difficult. Basically, what you're doing is, the thinner the lifts that you cut, the more accurate your hull, because what you're effectively doing is knocking off all of the wood between the places where it intersects. Okay, so you're taking a topographical map and you're just flattening it out so all the contours meet. Okay, this here is plank on bulkhead, and this is a very, very typical typical construction setup for kit models. And the reason why is because, one, it's lighter to ship. Two, you're using narrower pieces of wood, so getting your stock is easier. Okay, and then finally, you have some people that are saying, oh, well, this is just the way that a real ship is built. No. Okay. The other thing you will notice here is the space between the frames or bulwarks, bulkheads, we'll call them, the space between the bulkheads is quite wide. Now, these ships, depending on what scale they are, were planked. Your typical plank for a ship might be 2 to 4 inches thick. Well, if you get to the smaller scales, you're looking at maybe a 1/32 inch plank. With spacing being this wide, what happens is that the plank, as it goes between, as it bridges over the bulwarks, might want to belly in, and that's horrible. Okay. What some manufacturers, some of the older kits have done is they say, okay, well, we'll double plank the hull. Well, why are you double planking the hull? You're doing twice the work. Reason why you're double planking the hull is because if you try to straighten out that bellied spot, you're probably going to sand right through the first plank. Okay. Now, ways to fix that is you fill in the space between the bulwarks with a hunk of balsa wood, something real soft, so that when you plank, the plank has a solid surface to land on. When you get to this point, you say, why am I even bothering doing this? All right. Okay. This here is another plank on bulkhead. Okay. But you'll notice that the bulwarks are much closer together. Okay. This is a scratch-built hull. Now, there are 2 ways you can do this. Okay, you could do a scratch-built hull to make a scratch-built model using plank on bulkhead, or if you got the kit version, before you assemble the bulkheads, you could cut intermediate bulkheads. It's a whole lot of extra work, though, frankly. Okay, this here is a full-framed model. Now, this particular model is a 3/16 inch to the foot model of the Essex. You note it's got all of these frames all put in there, and you might say to yourself, wow, this is like a real ship was built. Well, actually, no. There are several different types of framing techniques. This type of framing technique is a stylized framing technique. That means that you have a double frame, 2 single frames, another double frame, 2 single frames, etc., etc. If you're planking as a prototype would, the actual warship hull is almost solid wood. Okay, the frames are that close together. All right, but this is one method that's used. Now, usually, why do you plank a ship? For me, you usually plank a ship if you want to leave some of the planks exposed, so you could show someone, hey, look how the real ship was built, or look at the effort I went through to build this model. I do, however, know many people, okay, many of them in UK that have websites and whatever, that actually build a fully framed hull and then plank the whole thing inside and out. I don't know why you would do that. You would be fitting me for a rubber room right now. Okay, this is a very important consideration: scale. Whether you build a model from a kit or from scratch, scale is very important. The scale of a model is a ratio of the actual dimensions versus the model dimensions. For example, a model that is 1 inch equals 1 foot is actually 1/12 the size. 1 equals 12. That means that a ship is 1/12 the size of a real ship. Typical scales used in models are 1:24, 1:48, 1:64, all the way up to 1:700. The higher the bottom, the higher the second number, the smaller the model. Sometimes the size of the box determines the scale of the model. Basically, the manufacturer made the hull small enough to fit within the certain size of the box. In that case, you got something weird called a box scale. Plastic models, for example, I'll show you a model later on in the presentation where the size of the hull, the scale of the hull, was based on, okay, this is the shelf I want to put the box on. So this is how big the hull could be to fit in the box. And that set the scale. And there's more than one model that was built like that was manufactured like that. The effect of scale is very, very real. An otherwise beautiful model will be ruined if certain things are out of scale. For example, the spacings between grating slats is about 2 inches, the size of a person's heel. In 196 scale, that's 20 thousandths of an inch. Many, if not all, readily available aftermarket gratings have a 16th inch spacing. So if you tried to use that on a 1:96 model, that equates to an actual size of 6 inches. Basically, you could drop your whole foot into a grating. Okay? This is one of my pet peeves. I've seen otherwise exquisitely done models that are totally ruined because these things are out of scale. As a matter of fact, we had a presentation done by a very good, an excellent model who passed away many years ago named Mike Castigliolo. And one of his props was a pin that he reproduced saying that, okay, I used this pin on an 1/8 inch scale model. Here's what that 1/8 inch scale pin would look like in full scale. And this prop that he had was literally 3 inches in diameter. Really, really funny. Okay, unless you live in a palace or museum gallery, you also need to consider how large a model can be. Most conventions in both the UK and the US Navy standardized on 1/4 inch to the foot. That's 1:48. Almost all contemporary models in museums are 1:48. The US Navy has at least one model of every ship they built during and since World War II. However, when they got to the Forrestal, they figured that 1/4 inch to the foot wasn't going to cut it anymore. The Forrestal was almost 20 foot long. So that changed things around. Advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of a kit, all the parts that are there, unless you want to do kit bashing. There is capability to make a very good finished model with some kit bashing. Research into the actual is encouraged, but is not strictly required. Everything's done. Disadvantages, limited subjects. Everybody has one. Some kits are very loose with accuracy or totally out of scale. Some kits are of craft that never existed. I've done many, many exhibits where younger kids will come up to me and say, oh, gee, look, a pirate ship. Okay, every ship is a pirate ship. Okay, and don't you know, to fill that niche, you have pirate ships out there. Okay, pirate ships were not frigates. Pirate ships were brigs. Pirate ships were small craft. Why? Because pirates weren't stupid. The larger the crew, the more they had to divvy up what they had to say. And they were going to battle against merchant craft. They didn't need big frigates. Okay? So, okay, the other thing is that there was an article one time that said what models should not be built. Well, there are literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of Constitutions out there, hundreds of thousands of HMS Victories. Okay, so something to think about. Okay, advantages and disadvantages. Scratch built, unique models of any ship for which you can find plans, quality and accuracy, better materials, build whatever you want versus what is available commercially. Disadvantages, you need to do extensive research. An advantage to some, I personally look at research, since I'm a history buff, I look at research as a benefit of doing it. A lot more time as you're building everything. You may have to mill your own hardwood, as there are very, if any, places to get good hardwood these days. This requires more investment in power tools. If you look at the period ship models in museums, they were built with no power tools or very rudimentarily or human-powered power tools. Um, but frankly, if you're into milling your own wood, I mean, you can get into scratch building with a dental saw, a fret saw, and some sandpaper, but it's a lot better if you have a scroll saw and a bunch of other stuff. The best of both worlds. There are manufacturers who are actively making mini kits. It has nothing to do with the size of the model. All the research is done by the kit manufacturer designer. The designer provides the plans and instructions. From there, you can purchase different phases of the model and scratch build what you want versus and scratch build what you don't want to buy. For example, you could buy a set of pre-cut bulkheads and then a stem piece and scratch build everything else. Another advance for even the scratch builder is laser cutting and additive machining. Just a caution, if you're going to do laser cutting or additive machining, both require special tooling, both are kind of expensive. Laser cutting, not so much anymore, additive machining for sure. Laser cutting and additive machining will accurately produce whatever you put in. That said, make sure that what you put in is accurate, because if what you put in has a mistake in it, it will accurately reproduce the mistake. One example that I can use is there was a kit manufacturer who I will not name, who had a kit with laser cutting in it, and he had several different size plan sheets, and he used the plan sheets to cut the parts. Well, one of his employees decided, you know, we're spending a lot of money printing different size plan sheets. Why don't we just print them all the same size? So they sent them out and printed them all the same size, and they laser cut from those reduced plans or changed plans and found out that the parts wouldn't fit together because guess what? The plans were in different scale and nobody ever noticed the difference or didn't realize there was a difference. Okay, this is HMS Cheerful. Okay, and this is a kit that isn't a kit in its normal sense because, and this is Bill's kit. Bill built this model recently. Okay, this is a kit where Bill was able to buy the bulkheads. Okay, he was able to buy kits for the cannon, but then again, he was able to make structures on his own. Okay, so this is one of those hybrid kits. And it's basically you're gonna have a kit where you're not throwing parts out. I'm only selling you what you want, and then if you want to buy more, you can buy more. If you want to make it from scratch, you make it from scratch, which I think is a really, really good marketing tool. Okay, and this is the complete Cheerful. Okay, next slide. Learning tools. There are several how-to books that describe how, for a particular type of ship, you can build every part. There are monographs. These are books of plans that are complete. The history of the ship is included, so there is very little additional research that's required. The internet has opened up so many other places. Many museums, as well as the British National Archives, have their collections online. Point of information about copyright. Many people are concerned about copyright infringement these days, and they should be. What's interesting, and I just researched this, is that if you go to British National Archives and you get information from British National Archives, if you use it, whether you use it for your personal use or you use it commercially, as long as you give credit to where it came from, you could use it. And as long as you don't say anything disparaging about it, it's something called a crown patent. Okay, if you haven't done this before, start small with a simple rig. Start with kits from reputable manufacturers, designers. There are thousands of unbuilt kits of Victory and Constitution because why? Somebody thought his first ship model, he could jump right into HMS Victory. It ain't going to happen. Also, do not buy designs and kits that have been pirated. I'm not going to get political, but I will tell you that there are manufacturers that have outright copied other people's work to the extent of even issuing their pirated kit with the original signature and the original copyright stamp still on the drawing that they're marketing as their own. Okay? There are websites out there that will tell you what kits are pirated, but be aware. Also understand that those pirated kits are a few dollars cheaper, but frankly, not that much cheaper. Also, while you can build a model with hand tools only, scratch building is going to require at least some power tools. This is not a cheap hobby. Okay. So ships for which models may not exist. About 20 years ago, and this is an interesting thing, okay? About 20 years ago, an article about what ships should not be built. If you do scratch building, be sure there's available information. A specific case is the point of the Colonial Frigate Alliance. Now, any of you who know about John Paul Jones and the Bonhomme Richard and the victory over Serapis probably heard about Alliance. Okay, Alliance at the time was commanded by a Frenchman who was frankly annoyed that John Paul Jones was given command of the two ships and he wasn't, because he felt that he was a regular Navy officer and John Paul Jones wasn't. Bottom line was that during the battle, not only did this person not follow John Paul Jones' specific orders, he actually fired into him. Okay? After returning to the colonies, the ship was turned over to John Barry. John Barry held the first commission in the Continental Congress. As a matter of fact, today, one of the gates at the Naval Academy is named after John Barry, and John Barry holds the very first commission of the United States Navy. To many, John Barry might be a better father of the U.S. Navy than John Paul Jones, but John Barry wasn't the politician John Paul Jones was. Barry had a very tough time filling out his crew. Congress's solution was to give him paroled English seamen for about half of his crew. Obviously, they mutinied. In any case, Alliance went on to have arguably one of the most storied careers in the Navy, possibly even more storied than the Constitution. The problem was it wasn't captured by the English. What do I mean by that? Most of the earliest American ships for which there are plans were captured. Since Alliance was never captured, there are no plans. The holy grail of ship models would be a model of the Alliance if only you could find plans. Nobody really knows what the Alliance looked like. There are two paintings of the Alliance. They're reasonably good paintings, but there's not enough detail to make a model. There is a model of the Alliance in the Independent Seaport Museum in Philadelphia. I want to know where the person got the plans for that. Some people think because the Alliance was built by the same shipyard that built the Essex, that the Essex plan would be a good starting point. The problem is the Essex was built in 1807. At the period, you're looking 20 years of difference. I don't think so. Okay. Sources of information are vast today. Depending on what period interests you, there are different places you can go. The National Archives has an original plan packet for most ships that were built for the U.S. Navy prior to and after World War II. They aren't online to view, but a trip to College Park, Maryland is all that it takes. Of course, with COVID, I don't know now. What happens is you register, you get a researcher's card that you have to renew every year. I haven't renewed mine in a long time. But you go in there, you get an index, you tell them what you want them to pull out of the file. They'll deliver a box to you. You have to wear cotton gloves to go through the box. They have archival photographs. Prior to, during World War II, and just after World War II, every ship commissioned by the Navy had multiple aerial photographs taken of the ship after it was commissioned from several different angles. So if you're looking up using a plan set that isn't for a specific ship, you could probably via National Archives get photographs of the specific ship and make the changes that might be required to make it more accurate. Okay, models start to completion. The following slides are some models both during their building and when completed. Okay, this is a model that I built. Okay, now this model originated from a box scale model of the USS Buckley. The USS Buckley was a Buckley class destroyer escort that was famous for capturing a U-boat because it rammed the U-boat. Okay, if you are a fan of movies, The Enemy Below with Robert Mitchum and Kurt Jurgens, the Haynes, the destroyer escort in that movie, is a Buckley class destroyer escort. So my daughter's father-in-law, his father was on the USS Camp during World War II. USS Camp is a Navy ship, but it was crewed by the Coast Guard. His father was a chief petty officer, and he crewed the USS Camp. What was interesting about the USS Camp is on its first trip conveying a convoy over to the UK, a freighter cut off its bow. Okay, and thankfully, my daughter's father-in-law's father, whose sleeping compartment was in the bow, was not in his sleeping compartment when the ship was hit. So my daughter's father-in-law hands me this box that says, "Hey, this is the model. This is the ship that my father was on." Obviously, you know, saying, "Hey, could you build it for me?" So I did a little research, and I find out that the Camp is an Edsel class destroyer escort. Big difference. Even though the general hull is the same shape, the Edsel is powered by diesel. The Edsel / Camp is powered by diesels. The Buckley was powered by steam. Also, the Buckley had torpedo tubes. The Camp did not. So I took myself down to the National Archives. I got a bunch of photographs, and what you see in white on that photograph, on the two photographs, the one in the lower left and the upper right, that's all scratch built. That is styrene over wood. I basically sawed everything off the deck of the model and replaced it all. Okay, come on, here we go. All right, these are photographs from the National Archives. And this is the Camp. And you will notice, too, that the pictures are different. Why are they different? The one on the left shows it as it was originally commissioned, with the 3-inch gun on the bow. The one on the right shows it with 5-inch mounts. The Camp was the first destroyer escort where the Navy decided that the 3-inch guns weren't powerful enough. So when they replaced the bow, they took the 3-inch cannons, the 3-inch guns off, and they put the 5-inch mounts on instead. So the Camp was the first and only Edsel-class destroyer escort to have 5-inch mounts on it. And this is the completed model. Okay. Next model. Okay, this is the training ship Empire State 6. If you've ever been into the Bronx, Fort Schuyler, New York Maritime, you will see a blue ship there. This is the blue ship. It's Empire State 6. This was entirely scratch built, 1-350. This was built for a woman who was getting married to someone that graduated from maritime, and she wanted a model of the ship that he served on, and she wanted it depicted as it was when he served. Well, lo and behold, maritime has a library that had a photograph of the ship, but the problem was there were no plans of the ship. However, They did have a drawing of what's called a Mariner C4 hull, which is a standard commercial hull. And what I did is I got to go on the ship and take copious photographs. And what I used as a general arrangement was I took a photograph of the fire zone map, and I used that as my general arrangement. And this is the completed ship. Okay, ships in a bottle. Okay, this is an art in itself. First, you put the C in the bottle, then you make the model, you fold down all the masts and rigging, you then slide it on a frame into the bottle, and then you have the lines long enough that you could re-erect the rigging. These two models, on the right is a pinch bottle, on the left is a skull bottle. Okay, the one on the left is a pirate craft. Okay, and the one on the right is a schooner. I will tell you that this model builder is also a club member, and he's also a surgeon. Okay, USS Wasp. Okay, this is a model of the Wasp as it appeared in 1807. It's the first ship that was built in the U.S. in the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. Okay, this here is a model of USS Hartford. Hartford was built as a commission that I did for an attorney that is a Civil War buff. Okay, this used photo etched parts. One thing I will tell you, one of the issues with doing a commission is the customer is always right. This particular customer wanted the model as she appeared at the Battle of Mobile Bay when it was Farragut's flagship. I have photographic proof and also documented proof that Farragut knew that the ships were going to be steaming, not sailing. So to avoid fires, he ordered that all sails be unbent off the yards and that it go in with bare yards. But the person I was building the model for insisted that he wanted furled sails. So it is what it is. Okay, next slide. All right, this is the USS Liverpool. This is what I call a tale of two models. This is the first Liverpool. You'll see down in the lower left, those are the plans laid out so that I can cut the bulkheads to make this plank on bulkhead model. This one here is the same ship, HMS Liverpool, only this one is built from the lift method. It's also half the size. It's also 30% smaller. Why is that? Well, because when I started the model, I wanted to do a 3/16 inch scale because that's the scale that I'm very comfortable with. It's a very convenient scale because one scale inch is 1/64 of an inch. So it's a very, very convenient scale, no mathematics required. I built the model, and at the same time, I was building the Hartford, and I had to deliver the Hartford, and I'm saying, you know what, this is going to be a huge model. So I built the Hartford in 1/8 inch scale. After looking at this model, I started to go back, I started to work on it a little bit, and I says, you know what, it's going to be too big for me to horse this model around because I like to build models fully rigged. So what I did is I put it aside and I started over again in 1/8 inch scale. Call me crazy. And this is the Hartford as it appears a week ago. Okay, how to get started. Start small and simple. Don't go for a battleship the first time out. Use all of the information that's out there. If you are tired or frustrated, put it down until tomorrow. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Read as much as you can and join a local club. For me, it's my support group. I learned a lot from joining the local club. I will tell you that. And one of the good things about most local clubs is it's not a, who's better, who's worse. It's a real support group. And also you have access to a lot of people with much more experience. Organizations, there's the Nautical Research Guild. This is the website for that. There's Model Ship World, which is a website, and this website has build logs and a plethora of information. There are literally 35,000 people worldwide who go on Model Ship World. So if you're looking for some information or a place to start, this can be very helpful to you. If you're into plastic building, there's the International Plastic Model Society. Every April, although not in 2020 because of COVID, but every April they have something up in oh, Bill, what town is that again? Doesn't matter. They got a website. But what they do is they have basically a swap meet, sale, and competition. And it goes every April. It's a one-day event, and the price is right. It's only a few dollars. And then finally, there's our club, Ship Models.
Wasn't it, Tom, up near Wayne someplace?
Yes, it's in Wayne. It's the Wayne PAL. Yeah, that's it, Wayne PAL. Okay. And then there's our club, Ship Model Society in New Jersey. Okay. And briefly, the Ship Model Society of Northern New Jersey was formed in 1981 as a forum for ship modelers to meet and exchange ideas and information. 34 people attended the first meeting on June 20th, 1981 at the New Jersey Historical Society in Newark, and provisionally chose Jim Roberts, Alan Frazier, and Stan Sinowitz as president, vice president, and secretary treasurer. Stan Sinowitz is still with us. Although he's got health issues, but he's still with us. He lives in Florida. And since we meet on Zoom now, he attends quite a few meetings. On August 28, 2007, we dropped Northern and became the Ship Model Society of New Jersey. Our vision is to encourage and promote the highest quality of ship modeling and maritime crafts, the free exchange of ideas, and the improvement of techniques and preservation of our nautical heritage. We've done exhibits and demonstrations. We did a month-long display in Shearing Plow, Morris County Library, Parsippany Library, South Danbury Library, East Brunswick, South Street Seaport, National Lighthouse Museum in Staten Island, Philadelphia Independence Model Con, Teterboro Flight Museum, many other places. It's dedicated to pursue the enjoyment of ship model in all its forms. We welcome anyone who might enjoy the hobby. Our meetings aim to share our collective wisdom and resources and provide the opportunity to enjoy the company of other modelers. We meet fourth Tuesday of every month, and it's interesting that you folks were talking about 5 Tuesdays in September versus 4. More than once, we've had people turn up on the last Tuesday instead of the fourth Tuesday, so it does happen. Except for December, we meet at 7 p.m. Usually, when we meet in person, we meet at the Roseland Library in Roseland, New Jersey, but due to COVID, we now meet virtually. Okay, I went on a little long, but any questions? You can open it.
This is Alan Hamilton.
Yes,
Tom,
sir.
thanks a lot. I think I was suspecting that you would have given us a full board presentation. I didn't realize this was going to be a advanced how-to, but thank you very much. So I had a few questions. Are you going to make the slides available?
I will send you the PDF if you want.
Yes, and we'll put it on the website so people can download it next week and view all the good information, and there's quite a bit of it. Next, can you emphasize that you can start small and you can progress through the kit difficulty? So there's a whole progression.
Yeah. Now, depending on what kind of modeling you started with, there are smaller kits that you could start with, and frankly, to tell you the truth, don't look at the ship size and think that that's the complexity of the kit. For example, there's a kit out there for basically rowboats that some people approach that as a beginner kit. And you know what? It's not a beginner kit. It's actually quite difficult. One of the most difficult things to do in ship modeling is to build an open boat. and you know, those quote unquote kits, those are more the intermediate to advanced. All right. What I'm looking at is you could pick up a kit of like Sultana, for example. That's a good kit to start with. Um, let's see. As far as plastic kits go, there are all kinds of kits out there. If you want to get used to and learn painting and that kind of thing, you could almost take any plastic kit off the shelf and assemble it. You might find after doing some research that it's really not particularly accurate. It looks kind of clunky, for example. But if you just want to get into, you know, put something together to get started, that's a good place to start. After a while, you might find out, for example, the kit that the model that I built of the Camp, one of the things that you note about the Buckley model that comes out of the box is it has plastic cut stanchions for the railings around the ship. Well, those stanchions in full scale would be about 1 foot in diameter. Okay.
Right.
So obviously the first thing you do is cut them off, but you know, so.
Yep. Finally, Tom, what is the closest museum or display in the New Jersey metropolitan area where you can see some pretty serious ship models?
Okay, I will tell you the closest one, and I'll tell you by far the best. The closest one I would think is the Independence Seaport Museum in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Now, currently they're closed. However, we do team up with the Philadelphia Ship Model Society. They're an older organization than us. And what they're doing, and I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, there's an all-glass room that sits right out on the pier at the Independence Seaport Museum, and they're going to be putting about 55 to 60 models on display in the window.
Okay.
Now, of course, I don't know about the wisdom of that because sunlight on models is not a good idea, but I'll leave that to them. By far, to me, the best domestic museum for ship models is the Naval Academy, Preble Hall.
Oh, yeah, of course.
By far. And the interesting thing about Preble Hall is, I'm talking about for period ship models. The interesting thing about Preble Hall is many of the models in Preble Hall are actually older than the models in the UK, even though most of the models were built in the UK. And just a real quick story on that. This is the Rogers collection. Captain Rogers was an oil person. I think he might have worked for Standard Oil many, many years ago. And basically, he was an Army captain in World War I. I think we all know that the end of World War I, the only country that made out after World War I that was left pretty much intact and economically in pretty good shape was the United States. In UK, a lot of the estates, a lot of the big manors, the service staff, they had been to France, they had been to war. They didn't want to work for free anymore. They wanted money. So what was happening in the UK is that you had a lot of people that were land rich and cash poor. So what they started doing is selling family treasures. Captain Rogers was smart enough to pick up a whole bunch of period ship models at real bargain basement prices and bring them over to the United States. He originally displayed them in Long Island. When he died, he bequeathed the whole collection to the Naval Academy on the condition that it have its own curator and that it be always displayed as one collection. So this thing is a phenomenal collection.
Okay, great. Why don't we get to the next questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Can I interrupt? Tom, it's probably time to take your slideshow down so people can see you.
Certainly.
And for all the participants that might want to ask questions, if you open the participants panel at the bottom, you can click on the blue hand and you'll be in a queue from which your question can be asked. So the next person on the list appears to be Bill. You want to unmute?
Yes. Okay. When you were talking about classes of models, you used the term age of sail. What does that mean?
Age of sail is usually from the late 1500s up through, I want to say, the second half of the 19th century.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes, hi, Tom. This is a bit of a crude and a vague question. Give us some kind of an idea of how many hours it takes to build one of these models. And I know that's going to be a whole hour in itself, but like the USS Camp looked to be a simple model, and then the last thing you had, the square rigger, when you had the questions, looks really complicated.
Tom, tell them how long you've been working on the Liverpool.
Okay, well, first let me tell you about the Camp. The Camp took me roughly 400 hours. Okay, roughly. And frankly, I could have went a little bit quicker. If I didn't scratch build as much stuff, it would have went quicker. The Wasp took 2,000 hours. Okay. All right. The Liverpool, what I'm working on now, I'll turn the camera around so you can see it.
No, you're not screen sharing now.
No, it's going to be on camera.
You're turning your camera around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
All right,
see.
wait a minute. What am I doing? Okay, hold on. I got to turn the camera around. There it is.
Oh,
Okay. Now the Liverpool, I've been working off and on the Liverpool for 20 years. Okay. And it's not that I've been working constantly on it at 20 years. I've done many other things in the meantime. It was interesting because a friend of mine asked me to do some a log on it, a build log on it. So I went looking at some old photographs, and one of the photographs that I actually showed in my presentation, I turned it over, and in the back it said 1992. So anyway, yes.
Mitch Erickson.
Already asked my question.
All right. I see Paul there. Paul.
Yeah, we hosts don't have a blue hand to raise, so I have to raise blue packing hands instead. So I'm just curious, could you talk a little bit about the range of costs? First of all, the kits, the simple ones, the complicated ones, how much money you have to invest in all the aftermarket, the additional things that you're going to, the scratch materials, and now leaving apart the machine tools, the sort of the consumables. I mean, what's the investment required?
All right. The Hartford, the model that I showed you of the Hartford, okay, that's the Farragut's flagship. Okay, that was a scratch built commission that cost me about $1,800 to build. Okay, that cost me about $1,800 to build. Model kits you could get as cheaply as $20. Some of the better model kits, let me get one real quick.
While he's getting that kit, I mean, there's a lot of kits that people have bought over the years that they never built, and they have them up on eBay, and you can get them at much reduced dollar amount versus the actual companies that sell them new. Almost on pennies on the dollar. So, and if you're going to scratch build, plans are relatively cheap, but materials, the wood and stuff like that can add up, but typically under $100.
Yeah, this is North Carolina. North Carolina, you could probably pick up for about $60. Okay, now that's without the photo etching. If you want to upgrade in the photo etching, you're talking maybe another $35, $40. As far as materials go, you could build a plastic kit by using modeling paints and brushing them on. You could even use rattle cans from a hobby store, so you could stay under $100 easily. If you want to do camouflage and that kind of thing, then you're going to start to get into airbrushing. And that's a whole nother technique. That's a whole nother skill that I frankly want to learn. But that's basically what we're talking about. if you buy some of the foreign kits, there are the foreign kits like Sovereign. It is like there's a Sovereign kit that's out there that's $900, and those kits, frankly, you're going to end up throwing half the stuff away anyway because of the quality of the kit. Conversely, there's a company called Craft that they market kits in the $600 to $700 range, like HMS Diana, for example, that while you could make upgrades, the base kit itself is actually pretty good. And then, of course, if you want to do something like Siren Ship Model Company, where you could buy a mini kit, and then you could add on. If you figure, hey, I want to build this thing, I'm good enough now to take a swipe at building this particular feature from scratch, then you don't have to buy anything else, you know. So
it's a little after 11:30, but there's only 2 more questions in the queue, so let's move them through, and then we'll talk about ending the meeting. Herb Waddell.
Yeah, just a historical comment and a question. In the 1930s, you could buy kits to build flying airplanes, rubber band powered, and ships. And I built 2 models of the North Carolina.
Oh, nice.
But in those days, probably the kit cost 29 cents or something. And the materials were balsa wood. You cut the bulkheads to the plan, and then you put stringers of balsa wood on and covered it with paper.
Yeah.
And applied airplane dope heavily, and it would be waterproof. You'd load it up with buckshot for ballast, and it would float.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one, I redesigned the superstructure because I was going to just set it afloat it and burn it anyway as a typical small boy. But I guess that type of construction is no longer used, is it? Balsa wood and paper?
Yeah, wood and paper still is. Balsa is too soft. Now, if you're going to do something lighter, you typically use basswood. I will tell you, airplane model builders still use something called silk span, and frankly, my model of the Liverpool, those sails are silk span.
Yeah, balsa, I would say for the airplanes because of its light, but for shipbuilding, you see sometimes balsa for filler, but not for anything exterior. It's just way too soft.
But for a small child, it was easy to cut with a razor.
Absolutely.
Bad?
Oh yeah, Tom, your opening picture showed spectacular detail with the ropes wrapped around the cylinder shafts.
Yeah.
What type of special equipment did you use for assembly, like tweezers, head microscope, magnifying glasses, and things like that? And how difficult is it to get those pieces into place?
Okay, what I showed you is that first photograph is the base of the main mast of the Liverpool, and you can pick up various tweezers. This is my magnifier. Okay, it's got a light on it. Okay, if you want to get into this hobby, between Bill and I, we got a whole mess of stuff that we could start you out with. You're looking at tweezers, a vernier. Not to take everybody's time. If you want, at some point we could, you want to do it later, I could show you. I have a full miniature machine shop here. I have a modeler's table saw, and some of these tools, frankly, are more expensive than the full size tools. Now that said, you could do a whole lot with a jeweler's saw, which is basically a small coping saw. You could do a lot with a bench extension. A moto tool like a Dremel, okay, a few sanding wheels, sandpaper, sanding blocks, tweezers. If you go to Michael's for rigging, you could pick up beading needles, help a lot, okay? Or you could These are some of my rigging tools. Okay. Now, these I happen to buy these from Micromark. They're up in Berkeley Heights because they were relatively cheap. But frankly, all this is bent wire stuck into a paintbrush handle. You could make your own if you wanted to.
Oh, like a dentist.
I've got dental probes too.
All right, thanks, Tom.
Alan Hamilton, when you want to close us out?
Yeah, Tom, remind us the website address where we can find you guys.
Yeah, it's on the slide, but I'll give it to you right now. Hang on. Let me get to it real quick.
This is a paid commercial.
Hang on. God, wake up, Ruggiero. It's New Jersey shipmodelsociety.org.
So New Jersey is all spelled out?
Yes. It's
Okay.
also in the presentation. So when I send you the presentation, it'll be there too. I have the website addresses for IPMS and also for Nautical Research Guild.
Okay, good. Now, thank you, gentlemen. I think maybe you whetted some people's appetite. So certainly Tad sounds like he may want to get a full-fledged introduction there. So what we do is, if you will pull up the certificates, and this is a certificate that we give to all our presenters. Now, the Old Guard of Summit, New Jersey gives a certificate of appreciation to Bill Brown and Tom Ruggiero. Now, to explain the orchid there, Summit, New Jersey was apparently at one time the orchid capital of America. We're not sure if they're growing orchids anymore, but in any case, you get one on a certificate. We will send you an electronic version and I'll mail you the real copy. And then finally, we will give you the Old Guard salute, which is, we ready?
Everybody can unmute.
Everybody unmute. And if you were in person, you'd hear us all clapping.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It was our pleasure. Thank you, Tom. Great job.